Winter is coming. In fact, no spoilers here, winter has been and gone in several senses of the word, but more pressingly, Season 1 of EDUQAS Media Studies A-Level is about to reach its grand finale. So I'm here just to give you a few additional thoughts on Late Night Woman's Hour, of course one of your set products, on which you could face questions on Section B of Component 1 on media audiences and media industries. So first, the basics. This episode of Late Night Woman's Hour was first broadcast on October 28, 2016 at 11 p.m. and it's subsequently made available across a range of different media platforms. Now, the episode is called Home, and yes, it is, among other things, the Scandinavian lifestyle concept of hygge, comfy socks, a mug of cocoa in front of the fire, snuggling up with your one-eared direwolf, all that. But it's also about 60 quid slippers, it's about making your own dolls of Victorian cricketers because your brother apparently needs them. It's about the conscious creation of home as a sanctuary. It's about quite a bit, really. So what I'm saying is, don't just say this episode is about hygge, because it's about quite a bit more. Key things that should inform what you say on this exam then. Number one is that this is a BBC programme, and the BBC is a public service broadcaster, and therefore one free of the commercial imperatives, i.e. usually make money for shareholders, that govern most media institutions. It has a remit to make bold, creative content that serves the needs of all groups in UK society. And in this case, it's serving the needs of quite a thin slice of the population. Educated, largely ABC1 women, more than likely above the age of 35, making this an example of niche, specialised media. Now, Radio 4 is the BBC's flagship radio station, a speech-based station that reaches over 11.5 million listeners per week, which is, I think, something in the region of 21% of the population. Women's Hour is a long-running staple of the station's schedules, broadcast daily at 10, presenting duties split between Fee Glover and Jenny Murray. And what the BBC have done with Late Night Woman's Hour is build on the success of this very established brand. And you can make a quick shout out to Hesmond Halge there with his theory about media industries formatting their products. And they've done this in order to reach a new, younger audience. Maintaining varieties of audience is a phrase to look for on the exam paper. Woman's Hour is a magazine-style show that mostly covers social and cultural issues with a female slant. So what you need to do is think about ways in which the BBC have tried to reach or maintain an audience and broaden the appeal of the show. One key method is, of course, the title. Late Night suggests not only the place in the linear schedule, like I said, originally broadcast at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, used to be known as post-pub slot on TV. Here it's probably post-dinner party for its middle-class target audience. Late Night promises something more confessional and intimate, something perhaps a little bit naughty, one for the Matilda heads there, something a bit more perhaps grown up. Another key way in which they have tried to reach out and extend the reach of this show to a new audience is via the choice of presenter. Lauren Laverne is somewhat younger and, dare I say, edgier than the usual presenting duo, no offence to them. She's a BBC Six Music presenter, an influential figure on social media, long-standing front person of the BBC's Glastonbury coverage, and of course a recovering indie starlet with band Kenickie in the early 90s. And I would heartily recommend you fire up their debut single, Come Out Tonight. Still, all these years later, a peerless bit of effervescent, ramshackle indie guitar pop. That's my audition to write for the NME. And of late, she has been hosting Radio 4's Desert Island Discs, the Sunday morning jewel in the station's schedule. Another key idea, and one that is almost certain, or as certain as we can get in these situations, to come up on your exam, refers to the way in which digital technologies have had an impact on the radio industry. So think about the scheduling again. Most listeners to this show are likely to have listened online, perhaps on the BBC Radio website or via various podcasting platforms from Stitcher to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. Such methods of distribution and circulation free the audience from the restrictions of the linear schedule, giving them freedom to choose when and where and how they will listen to the show. In 2018, the BBC launched its Sounds app in a bid to do what the head of BBC Radio said at the time was to future-proof the corporation, a recognition of the importance of digital convergence, key phrase, and the fact that young audiences have an expectation that content will be available on demand in ways that fit around their lifestyle, rather than they have to fit their lifestyle around fixed schedules. I would really urge you to think about how the choice of guests and the mode of address in the episode help position the audience, whether this be in the way Lauren Laverne constantly responds to answers with "it's so interesting" as she directs the conversation, or in a number of other ways as well. It's worth noting how the mode of address, remember that means the way in which media texts speak to their audience, combines humour. On one popular books website, Lauren Laverne says, with a knowing reference to Amazon. At other times, something not dissimilar to what you might hear in a university cultural studies seminar. For example, Susie Orbach talking about a retrenchment to the home, and Dr. Rachel Hurdley discussing the conscious creation of home as a sanctuary during the Industrial Revolution. Even mentions of popular culture, Great British Bake Off, Nigella, leads to some very highfalutin critical theory being bandied about. These are more uptight women than loose women, or loose women if you took the ooh out and were just left with the LSE. Quoting some examples from the show, familiarity with the names of its guests will be absolutely essential, just to putting yourself above the competition in this exam. So from the top we have Helen Zaltzman, Crafty Spice, Trina Hanahan, Hugger Spice, Susie Orbach, uses the word retrenchment, sees 30 seconds of the Great British Bake Off, and yet has some very strong opinions about its spice, and Dr. Rachel Hurdley. How much for a pair of slippers, Spice? This should give you real advantage when you come to discussing the show. And it's worth noting, though, how on this particular edition of Late Night Woman's Hour, how uniformly white and middle class that choice of guests is. It's a really narrow range of representations that they've gone for here, and that could well be a factor in determining how some audiences might respond to the show and might take a more negotiated response rather than the preferred response of the producers. Quick note before I sign off about regulation, a word that I hope doesn't come up on the exam paper in relation to Late Night Women's Hour, but we have to be prepared just in case it does. Ofcom is the body responsible for regulating radio, and a really interesting thing to consider, with a glance in the direction of Livingston and Lund, is the question of who is responsible for regulating radio content when it's not distributed via the radio, but via platforms such as Apple Podcasts or such as Spotify. It opens up one of those difficulties of regulating in the digital age that Livingston and Lund's theory touches upon. Okay, I'm off now to enjoy some socialist coziness in my favourite political nook. Hopefully I'll be back with one of these videos soon. Hope that was of some use to you. See you soon. Bye-bye.